We are on this new creation series. We are on episode number 3. So if you have your outlines, please take that out. Very helpful to follow along. And of course, have your communion elements ready if you want to take that with us, the bread and the cup. So put that to the side. All right, we're talking about the new creation. So behind me, you have this old creation, and then you have this new creation. People are thinking that God is going to somehow refurbish the earth and create a physical new creation. This is why right now, and in a lot of various time frames in history, especially in America, there's always been a swell of like end time eschatology. Anytime there is a shift in political movements or an idea that, things are going so well for the majority of people. And so this is a framework that I think church history and Christendom has always focused on, is this physical world coming to an end, this apocalypse, and all of a sudden out of the dust, somehow God's going to fashion and recreate a physical world. And what we are recognizing here is that the Bible is not speaking of a physical world. The Bible is talking about a covenantal world. That's very, very different. And I know we can say spiritual, right? But what does that really mean, right? So I want to keep it more covenantal, because in their worldview, when Moses is writing down and penning the Torah, he has to establish a legitimacy for the existence of Israel. That's when he's bringing them out of Egypt as slaves. And now they need to start up a whole new, batch of Jacobites. Now they become Israelites. And he now has to begin to lead them into what does it mean to create their new world of heaven and earth. Being slaves in the past for 210 years. Now they're having to compete with all the other kingdoms in that region to say, no, we are the head of Adam. And that's what the Bible is all about. It's about conquest. It's about kingdom building. It's about having the authority of heaven and earth, having the authority of God to say, okay, who's going to rule the land, right? Being the head, not the tail. You hear a lot of that in the Bible. Israel, you were the head, you were not the tail, But if you don't follow the stipulations as written in the agreement and the covenant, then you will be the tail and you won't be the head. So they're all competing about this. So when we're looking into this new creation, we know here that immediately the Bible is talking about a covenantal new creation. That's why it's a new covenant. It's the new man. It's the new creation, the new creature. That's what the Bible is referring to. Now, can that mean that, okay, now the world's going to be new? Well, let's start from that basis right there before we go into the outline. We have 4 points today. When we talk about when you change your mindset, everything shifts, your perspective shifts. So when your mindset changes based on a whole different set of belief systems, then you're looking at a world in a very different light. And when you look at the world, meaning the world is such a concept, it's a huge concept. It's not a geographical place. Let me repeat that. When we use the word world, we're talking about a concept, not talking about a geographical place. So when we change our minds and we have more and more information about what reality is or how the world functions, then we begin to shift our mind frame. And that mind frame, just that tweaking of what we're doing here in deconstructing and reconstructing, is that we begin to now see the world in a total different way. And because of that, what happens, it's like a whole new world. That's what's happening. And I'm going to do a whole series on what does it mean for archetypes, antitypes, and then pattern types. I'm going to do a whole series on that on Facebook. If you subscribe to my channel there, I'm Mercy Me Mentor. And I'm going to be explaining what the Bible is trying to do. Is the Bible coming at it from a standpoint of, okay, God wasn't like this before, but Jesus comes, and now we have a whole new way of how God deals with humanity. And now where we're at 2,000 years later, that's still going on. We think of it in a linear fashion because that's how we are trained to think in our Western theology, in our Western mindset. But that's not where the Bible is set in. It's in an Eastern, ancient Near Eastern setting. And they're very circular in their mind frame. They're not linear in any fashion or in any way. So we have to go into that kind of thinking. So when we go into that thinking, into the Bible, what we're recognizing is that what always was, always is, always will be. So when Jesus comes on the scene, we were told in Christendom, God did a whole new thing with humanity. I wanted to challenge that point of view when I'm talking about archetypes. God always was interacting with humanity like the way he wanted to when Jesus came on the scene and bringing up a whole new covenant system. It's just that now, when the invention of writing began, here now you have it written down in history and it never has to be repeated again. So we have something to look back to say, aha, God showed us right there. It's not just in our imagination, it's not just in, whatever folklore or in our spirit or in our hearts. He actually did it in real history in real time. And he had to do it with some people group. It could have been any people group. But he chose this really minority group in the Middle East when Mesopotamia was developing kingdoms, and he thought, I'm going to do it with them. And so we have a record of it in the Bible. That's an archetype, meaning that what he was doing in the past, in that past history, he was exemplifying or manifesting what he always was from the very beginning. Whether people understood it, whether people knew about it, whether people heard about it, it doesn't matter. It's just showing humanity throughout time now and moving forward that God already did all of that. So now we can live in the new what? In the new mindset, in the new framework, not of like a covenantal system anymore, because that never applied to anybody and of us here, but of a new spiritual reality, a way that we think and do, so that now our physical world is different too, and it all connects when we think about it in this fashion. So we're talking about cosmology of the biblical world. And when we think about cosmology, cosmos, right, we're talking about a concept more than a geographical place. But because it was written down and God is working in time with humanity, he decides to work it through in the Mesopotamian world frame. So when you see the Bible and it talks about the whole world, you have to know here at 153net that the whole world for them was right here. The whole world for them right here was Mesopotamia. That's how it started. And God wanted a headship to be the head of all the regions here. He chose Adam, a man. Nobody even knows his name. That's why he's just called the man, right? So what we have in the story of Genesis is Adam, this man who is of the earth, or you can say the land, the dirt, the soil, the dust. It all means the same thing. It's a very complex word in Hebrew. And it's talking about this geographical area. Now, throughout time from what, 4,000 BCE, 5,000 BCE to, 3,000 BCE, 2,000 BCE, 1,000 BCE, and then when Jesus comes, this whole area, the names change, but it's still, this is their world. They would not have been thinking about China. They wouldn't have known China in a lot of ways. They wouldn't have known very early on. They wouldn't have been thinking about South Africa. They would have been thinking about Brazil. They wouldn't have been thinking about any of that. And if you went in this time frame to Brazil, they wouldn't have been thinking about Mesopotamia. They wouldn't have been thinking about South Africa. They don't care, because at that time, humanity, they're just focused on the four corners of the earth, because they thought the earth was flat. So when you look at ancient text or ancient literature in all of these societies and you start reading it, you will see the same phrases of, God is going to give us and conquer, we're going to conquer the whole world. They say the same thing. They say, oh, we now have the legislation of the four corners of the earth. They'll say, we are the center of the whole world. They will say, we will go and what? Push forth our kingdom or our empire to the ends of the earth. This is not specific to the Bible. The Bible is speaking an ancient tongue, an ancient description expression. So all of these other ancient cultures use the same thing. And that's what's so beautiful, is that we're actually unwrapping this biblical covenantal language, but also seeing it across the whole earth. So when we talk about in the Bible, they're talking about the world, they're talking just about Mesopotamia. And throughout time, this becomes Turkey. Throughout time, this is Egypt. Throughout time, this is what? Israel, right? This is Saudi Arabia. Right here is Iraq, Iran. And then up here you have what? You have Greece. And then you have Rome. Why is this their whole world? Because this is where the Bible gives us a record that Noah's three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, that they had these regions and they were given this territory after the great flood, okay? And we have all the flood stories in Mesopotamia. They're all talking about this huge, horrific same event, right? So what you had is that Japheth went north, and these are people all the way into Europe. Shem has this whole area right here. And then Ham, he has down south. So when you talk about the three sons of Noah, this is their whole world. Now that we know it's just talking about Mesopotamia, it makes the reading of the Bible totally easy to understand. And now we're understanding the context that we have to keep it in. We have to keep it in that context, because if we go out of that context, the original authors never meant anything outside of that. Yes, we have a question?
No, I just said amen.
Oh, amen.